year out of retirement. Said hello to the coach. He bust my chops a lot. There were some younger kids. He was already working on his next generation. And I decided to I saw one athlete was making some technical errors I thought was easy to fix. I said, Coach, can I help that kid out? And he says, yeah, go for it. Help him out. So I walk over and I said, hey, listen, I think you should move your feet or move your hands. I can't tell you what the cue was. It worked. This kid lit up, and it lit me up, man.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. I was like, damn, that felt kind of good.
Yeah.
And then he asked for more. And by the end of the practice, I was really engaged with this young man. He later became my very first athlete, and we're buddies to this day. In fact, he was a groomsman in my wedding.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, years later. So he asked if I would return, and I did, and I kind of started coaching. My coach then, my mentor, was growing ill. He was already in his 60s when I met him as a young boy, and he ultimately passed away 2002. I kind of took over as head coach of his team, and I am still to this day the head coach of that very team. It's just the face of it has changed a few times.
So now, was this high school based when he was he a high school teacher and did it in the school?
Yes.
And so when you started coaching that, did you do it in the high school, or did it kind of segue into like a private thing?
It did, but not for nearly 10 years, man.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you were a police officer?
Yep.
And then did that in addition to that?
Correct. Right. Watch this. I had to become a cop to pay the bills because weightlifting wasn't going to do it.
Right.
That was my career. In fact, back then, and by and large, it's still the case now, though it's changed. Every weightlifting coach at every national meet you would go to were professionals in some other industry. This was a hobby for us all. It's just something we did on the side out of love.
Yeah.
And that was the case for me. So I was cop by day, coach by night.
Right.
I would get off duty in the afternoon if I was on night shift. It'd be morning. My hours would change a little bit, but take the uniform off, or when I made detective, I'd take the suit off. And now I would coach in the high school for 2 hours, usually 2.5, my team practice. And even back then, young, early coaching. And I'll tell you right now, and for the people who could be listening to this later, you certainly don't have to be a great athlete to be a great coach. If you want to be a great coach, just be a great coach.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I say that because I was really relying on my athletic career to do this coaching thing that I'm falling in love with all over again. And I'm no longer angry at this sport anymore. I didn't know the first thing, man. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. Programming? Nah, I was trained to be a robot, do what it says.
Yeah.
So I cut and pasted a lot, not knowing what I was doing until I figured it out.
And I think that's a learning process, big time, because, when I started, we live in, well, it's funny, we have a lot of high-level lifters, I feel like, in the North Carolina area, but at least in Greensboro, where we're located, there's no weightlifting here, except for now, other than us. And when I got started coaching people, it was kind of just a couple close friends, and I didn't know what to tell them to do, so I would just copy and paste programs, and never pretend like I wrote them, but be like, okay, we're going to try this like LSUS program. Okay, we're going to try this Catalyst Athletics program. Okay, we're going to try this. And the only thing I did different was I would just take notes and try to figure out what people did well or what didn't work, what did work, and then started getting into writing programs. I think, for me personally, at least, that was a huge building block of learning, is just copy paste.
Yes. And with that being the biggest question an athlete has, am I following a program that will get me PRs? Which drives me nuts, because a beginner and an intermediate really don't need to be focusing on PRs. There's other ways to quantify progress.
Right.
But that you can't avoid it. It is what it is. And
it's the ultimate point of the sport.
That's true, right? And you start the sport with that in mind. But it's like I have seen athletes who are following a good program that is proving results for them, and they still question whether they could be doing something better.
Yeah.
But going back to, and I think we're going to talk about programming here in a second. I was in high school super blessed because I didn't have to recruit. They were all there. I'm really in a really lucky spot. Every day I get out of bed, man, I thank my lucky stars, because I am now making a full living off of a barbell. Dude, that was never even, you could have told me 10 years ago that would happen and I would have laughed. I was a cop, like I said, and that I figured I would ride a full retirement as a police officer, then get my pension, continue to do this hobby coaching thing that I would pay money to do, not make it, and grow old and die. And I was very happy with that. Opportunities have certainly come up, and that has certainly changed. But because I'm in this position, I think I do get a lot of newer coaches to ask bounce questions off of me. How do I get so many youth and junior lifters? It's hard for me to answer that one, and it's because I didn't start off in the private sector.
Right.
I was at a public high school that itself had like 3,000 students and a huge athletic program, and so lifters would just walk into the door saying, "I want to do this," and I was doing it for free for many years. I didn't have to do recruiting so heavily, and finally, about 9 years later, I broke off because it grew so much that I started a private thing, and I did affiliate with CrossFit. I got involved with CrossFit. I love CrossFit. I work out. I Metcon now often. It's done a lot for the sport, but I also loved it as its own sport, especially when I got into it in 2007. It still maintained a good, heavy community within itself.
Right.
And that reminded me of weightlifting. And so opening a CrossFit gym, I moved my weightlifting program from the high school into it. That was in 2009. And I have been private ever since, but I've remained in the town that I am outside of Orlando, Florida. And I just think pulling in so much mileage in this area, I just think that I've established myself here. So word of mouth, man, I've been coaching so long that I'm almost to the point where I'm beginning to coach children of parents whom I once coached.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. So your youth program, I guess, it's just been a very organic, kind of snowball effect, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Then they go older and their younger sisters and brothers do it too.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's your approach to your youth programs? What do you have set hours of the day that are youth specific? Is it kind of, how do you, handle your high level of youth?
I actually mix them all together. What I offer are certain times of the day where I am on the floor, where I can commit along with my coaches, and we are actively training youth, junior, collegiate, senior, and master level people all at the same time. They all do have separate programs. We just know who's who.
Right. Of course.
They tend to kind of gravitate towards each other anyway. So when you walk in, it may look like I've placed the youth on those few platforms over there. My masters are on the left side. That just happens within the team socially, honestly.
Right.
So it actually makes it easier for us. But we coach them all at the same time. I do that because I found if I were to segregate age division hours, it won't be long before they start bleeding into each other anyways, because you have some parents who can't get the kids there at a certain hour.
Right.
And, to avoid making some people minimizing those that I can't make happy, it's a free-for-all during certain hours of the day. There is a start time, so we can be organized. But they all train together, man. The only time I actually separate them is when we get close to a certain national championship, say junior, senior, what have you. We actually kind of I get them together for camaraderie, and let them train or hit their, max effort days as a unit together, since they'll be traveling together. But outside of that, daily routine, we're all together.
Now, what about when a kid or anybody, I guess, first starts? How do you introduce new people to your program?
Always with my set progressions. I have a certain way I like to introduce the movements. I do the top-down approach like most coaches do and should. Power position first.
Right.
We eventually get down to the ground. In the process of doing so, it also works as our assessment and our evaluation of, their mobility, their coordination, things like that. We make mental notes about that. So I always start with progressions. We spend a lot of time there. Then we have them follow a program that is not percentage-based necessarily, but is it's technique-based. But the amount of weight we allow them to increase by is solely based on their level of control.
Yeah, of course.
Like anything else, as it should be. Certainly, I'm not into maxing out beginners.
Right.
My youth generally train one less day a week than my advanced lifters. And every day they walk in, they are exposed to so many different movements and still get it done in like an hour.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny. Little side story. As I'm sure Jenny Arthur and Norik Vardanian have been doing seminars across the country, across the world maybe. And I got to attend one, it was like 2 hours from here last week. And just the way everything kind of got, divvied up, I was sharing a barbell with two youth guys. And awesome. I am significantly stronger than they are, but I could not keep up with them. Like,
oh, man.
It's funny because he was like, all right, we're going to do these muscle snatches, let's do a couple sets, we'll walk around, we'll kind of watch you. I want everyone to just do sets of 3 muscle snatches. And so me and these two kids, they're like, one was probably 15 and one was probably like 12 or 13. We're like going in like a round robin, and every time I'm like, damn it, it's my turn again. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, it's only 40 kilos, but like, they look like they're doing this a lot easier than me. But
it's
like,
crazy.
They did not need breaks.
Yeah, like they're on some interval or something.
Yeah. It was kind of funny. I said something to one of the older guys, like when we had a break, I was like, man, I might be able to lift more weight, but they can definitely do it more times.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's cool to watch, and they can just come in, throw on lifting shoes, and get into it without any warm up.
Yeah.
It takes me half an hour to get my body awake.
Yeah.
And then you got to teach them to slow down, of course. They're taking proper rest in between sets. But you give them a set of 3 clean and jerks, man. They drop the bar. It's 30 seconds. They're back on it.
Right. Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah. And I'm like, how about 2 minutes, boys? How about 2 minutes?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I kind of I find that same thing with people coming over from CrossFit. Like getting into weightlifting, it's the same thing. Maybe they don't necessarily have the ability to do it in 30 seconds. They just have the want to not sit down and do it again in 30 seconds.
That's a good way to say it. Yeah.
But I guess that's a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah, it is. And I've seen it.
So with your youth lifters, like, you said you have them do a whole variety of exercises. They get done very quickly. You specialize very fast, like you said a little bit ago. I mean, granted, like you said, you played sports, but up to 12, and I'm assuming at 12 is when that was it. It was weightlifting, and you were specialized at that point forward.
Yeah.
Given that being your experience, how do you like progress, or like what's your views on long-term progression for youth?
I think giving them the proper programming and exposing them to the proper stresses with time. And I guess if I can summarize easy, my philosophy on their development is really based on them. They just don't know it, right?
Yeah.
I'm making decisions based on them and where they're at. Some develop quicker than others, right? And so I give them positions for quite some time. And when I can see that their consistency with the classic lifts is there, then I consider them an intermediate. Their program will change.
Okay.
You're looking at a beginner when every rep just looks different.
Yeah.
At every weight, it just looks different. And so consistency is not there. No big deal. Well, they're still a beginner. So you hold on to them and you keep them there. But when you start realizing, Hey, that entire